time for a takeover. My guest today has been in some of the biggest bands that we play here at KLOS, names like Santana, Journey, even Bad English over the years. He has got a new record out. It's called Neal Schon, featuring Mendoza and Castronova. So we're going to play a track from it and come back and talk to Mr. Neal Schon. This is Serenity. All right, there you go. Serenity, Neal Schon, and the man is here himself. How are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing really well, man. We kicked off our tour last night in Colta Vista, and it's a little smoky from all the fires, but I had a great show there, and looking forward to the Hollywood Bowl, and it was like sleepwalking when I came in here this morning.
Well, we appreciate you joining us on a show day, no less, and stoked for Journey, Steve Miller Band at the Hollywood Bowl tonight. You guys have played the Bowl a ton of times, right? Is it one of your favorite venues?
It's been like awesome. Like, why not continue to do it? It's a great venue. It sounds great. I know it's probably a bit of a pain for everybody that's going to park and get in and out of, but for us on stage, I remember it always sounds great on stage, and it's spread out really cool. I mean, we used to play the Greek down here for like a few nights or 2 nights, and I did not dig that place. I mean, it's nice, but more set up for like acoustic guitars or a symphony, and the sound ordinance that was there, it was like all I could ever hear on stage was drums. They make you turn down everything so low. So we're gonna have fun tonight. We're sold out, been sold out for a while, so it should be a great show.
That's awesome, man. Well, and we're glad to see you in town again. Now, this tour, right? It's kind of a Bay Area vibe that you've got going, right, with Steve Miller Band and Tower of Power.
It is, Tower, and I go back to even before I joined Santana in 1970. Like around 69, I was hanging out with the Santana guys before I was in the band, and I used to go with Carlos, and we go check out Tower, and we sat in with them all the time, and so I go back with Mimi and all the guys a long ways. They sound amazing. I think they sound better now than they did back then, which is pretty frightening,
Yeah, well, it's
everybody get out there early, man, and check Tower out. They are just funking it up.
See the whole thing. It's gonna be a nice warm night. Go out to the bowl, you have some wine, maybe one of those big tall beers that they get you for like $20. They're worth it.
Yeah, and it's great to see Steve Miller. I saw him, talked to him for a while last night. I mean, years back when I was playing with Paul Rogers doing the Muddy Waters Blues Tour, we actually opened up for Miller, and we would jam every night. He's a great guy, and I met him, back in the day too. And our bass player Ross Fowler, he was in Steve Miller Band before I started Journey.
And it is kind of a community for a lot of the Bay Area guys up there, right? Like, everybody knows each other.
It's the Bay Area has always been this melting pot, of music. You have these areas like Austin, Texas has all these great guitar players and great musicians, and actually one of the best cities I think I've ever been in. If you want to go out and you want to see like 10 different shows in one night, or a bit of 10 different shows, you can do it there, and you'll see like amazing music in every one of the places. San Francisco was like that in the heyday, and it still is like that. You have to look a little bit harder because all the places, some of them are closed down. All the clubs are closing, and that's pretty much like it is everywhere, though. But still a lot of great musicians come through San Francisco.
Do you think, because you're still up there, right? You live in the Bay Area at least some of the time, right?
Yeah, I live there. I love it. I've been there my whole life. Yeah.
You know how it kind of is up there. Like, I didn't figure this out because I lived there for a decade before I came here. Up there, like the rivalry between Northern California and Southern California, that's a real thing. And then I figured it was kind of like, it works with the sports teams or whatever, but like, when I got down here, I thought everyone was going to be like, man, Northern California, screw those guys. They love the Bay Area. It's like a one-sided kind of thing, right? So
yeah, I lived down here for quite a while too. When I was in Bad English with John Waite and Dean and Ricky Phillips and Jonathan Cain, we were based out of Los Angeles. And so I lived down here for a good, 7 years until the big quake happened. Then I loaded up. I had a Bronco at the time. I had 2 Ferraris at the time. Then between all the fires and the floods and stuff, the Ferraris were useless, so I sold them. And I had a Ford Bronco, and I loaded up my truck. And I remember that I was in Calabasas at the time. I was going to buy a house there. And that big quake happened, you know, and it literally shook me out of bed and busted all the glass windows in the house, freaked me out. And I was like, I was wearing tennis shoes and sweats, like to sleep. And then I started sleeping in my truck because I want to feel the aftershocks. They were coming so often. So I booked, I put all my stuff in the truck, and I started, you know, driving back up north, and I called a good friend of mine, and I said, find me a house. I'm relocating.
on a hill, something solid. No landfill for me. All right, so we've got a bunch of records from a lot of, I noticed this, I don't know if this was intentional on your part, but a lot of really great guitarists we're going to play today. And I'm going to start with one that you picked out from, you know, he's the guy. He's the guy from Seattle, Washington, Mr. Jimi Hendrix. Anything you want to tell everybody about your love of Hendrix?
You know, I started playing guitar when I was 10, and for the first 2 years I was playing guitar. I was listening to a lot of jazz. My dad was like a jazz musician, and so I was checking out like you know, Larry Coryell and Wes Montgomery, and you know, a lot of big band orchestras, you know, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and Ellis Fitzgerald. And then I was like into the R&B thing, Aretha Franklin, and started listening to Albert King. And, you know, then all of a sudden everything came over from England, you know, and Jimmy broke out of England, and I was digging, you know, this early Zepp stuff with Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck with Rod Stewart, and you know, then Jimmy came, and I was like, I heard that on the radio, and I go, what is that? You know, that is what I want to know about. And so, you know, I've been, you know, diehard fan, and he was a musical genius, and ahead of his time. I mean, this stuff never gets old. Yeah. It's ageless, and still smokes everything else that I listen to. So there you go, you know.
That's what's, it still sounds fresh. It still sounds ingenious because it was just so, he was the ultimate self-taught guy, right?
You know, I mean, I think he just detached himself from the rest of the world and got lost in his own mind and soul and imagination. Right. And just came with it and didn't care what anybody thought. I think that's, you know, has to be the way he came up with this stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, Neal Schon is our guest. Is the takeover. We were talking during the break about Hendrix and how Hendrix actually played bass on All Along the Watchtower, and how you've started playing bass on a bunch of your records, right?
Yeah. This last one that we just played, though, you know, Marco Mendoza is an amazing bass player from down here. You know, many people have probably seen him down there doing his thing, his Latin fusion gig. But yeah, I started experimenting on the Calling, my solo record before this one, with Steve Smith, that Igor Lem played on, and Jan Hammer. It was really just Steve Smith and myself in the studio when we created everything and made everything up on the spot. And so it was sort of by accident, because I didn't have anybody I wanted to use at the time on bass, and I started playing live solos with Smith as we were laying down the grooves, you know, like I'd play the sections that we you know, wrote together, and then I'd start soloing like just live over it, and just like, you know, taking it where I wanted to take it, and without really knowing, you know, what was going to be on the bottom side. And then I just went, well, let me just throw on a bass and see, you know, if what I'm hearing in my head is going to sound cool. And so I put on the bass and started playing against it, and I was like pleasantly surprised that I knew how to follow my own guitar playing, and which makes a lot of sense, you know, but it's kind of like backwards of what you usually do. You usually get really organized with the drums and bass, and then the guitar follows that. Now I prefer like to go with the drums and guitar and be free. Like I was talking to you about Jimi Hendrix, the original band. I mean, him and Mitch Mitchell kind of floated all over the place, and Mitch was coming from more of a jazz improvisation type place, and Jimmy was more electric blues, you know, mixed with that jazz. And then he didn't want a busy bass player that was like locked down to a groove, you know, until they did you know, Band of Gypsies. And so he just wanted that tuba type bass that fills out the bottom so they could float around. So I kind of started doing that same process, or emulating that, you know, on some of my records. And there's another record in the can I was telling you about that's a double CD that'll be coming out later this year too, that I'm using a name that KLOS gave me as Vortex. Cool. And that's got Smith and myself, Steve Smith, myself, and Jan Hammer and Igor Lend, and I'm playing bass again. And we had a blast on this record. This one is definitely made to play live. It's more organic than the last one. It's all instrumental, but it is on the ceiling.
That's awesome. And we'll talk a little bit more about your future plans, but now I want to take it to a bluesier place. We got some Led Zeppelin to play. I mean, another band, obviously. Everybody loves Led Zeppelin. What do you love about Led Zeppelin?
You know, I just, the first time I heard Zeppelin, I just loved that it was, you know, there was blues implicated in it, but it was also electric again, like Jimmy in a different sense. And same with Jeff Beck, you know, and Clapton. But I loved Jimmy Page's, you know, he's one of these guys that knows how to, you know, make the landscape around him. He knows what he's doing. You know, all the guitar parts are made for that landscape, so he can like just blow in it, you know. And he had great chemistry, you know, with the band, with Robert Plant and John Bonham and Paul Jones, and so, you know, they just made magic at the time, I thought.
Yeah, that magic is exactly what I was thinking. Like, there's almost like a little black magic, like you think of like the real old blues guys used to have, you know. Like,
you know, they definitely had a thing that was happening, and I love the first record. You know, out of all they've made a lot of great records, but you know, I thought that Jimmy Page was at his tops, you know, on that first record, just really fresh, and I believe they made that record very quickly in a couple days in the studio, and it sounds like it. It doesn't sound like it was too thought out. It sounds like they rehearsed a lot and knew where they were going, and basically went in and played live and did very little overdubs. But Page was a master to me, I think, at overdubs, guitar overdubs, and I studied that stuff. You know, I mean, it just has one little guitar that creaks in here and there with a little different sound once in a while. I mean, a lot of new records, man. Guys, I think they just stack guitars on top of guitars, and you got this massive wall, but it's the subtlety is gone of like a little part creeping in. So, and Jeff Beck is a master at that, you know, and Jimmy.
Leave a little space, man. You got to leave a little space. I want to ask you a little bit about some future stuff going on with the band. I don't know what you can tell me about and what you can't. But you guys are doing this tour for a while, and then maybe doing some more stuff in 2015.
Yeah, we're playing all through the summer here, and it's actually a relatively light year for us compared to what we usually do. But it's because we're planning a big year next year and playing everywhere. And you know, I don't know exact specifics about where we're going to play besides the U.S., but I know that we're going to be playing a good portion of the whole year. And you know, I've reunited with the original Santana band as well, and so you know, we've been talking about doing, you know, co-headline dates with Journey and Santana, which would be very, very interesting as well.
Yeah.
You know, anything could happen on that show. Raleigh with us, and we could go back and play some of the early stuff, start the show like that. Who knows what'll happen, but it'll be festive, man. It'll be fun, and it'll definitely be jamming, and I'll have double duty, and I'll love that.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And now you guys had the 40th anniversary of the band was last year, right? Do I have that right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you doing anything? I know there was some talk at some point about doing something to commemorate all of that, or are you guys moving on? We're gonna wait till 50?
You know what? We just didn't get to it, and so it's going to have to wait. It's been here and past already, but you know, we are talking about doing another record. One of the main reasons that we haven't done a record is that, you know, we go like, how do you get it out anymore?
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult. I mean, if you make a new record today, it's basically because it's something that you need to do, you know, and you want to do, and we certainly want to do that, but pulling us all together. I mean, Arnell's in the Philippines, and everybody's all over the place, so it's not as easy if we all lived in San Francisco like we used to. So, but we are talking about doing another record before next year, and definitely I'm doing a record with the Santana guys, and so we've been in the studio already, and so I want to come with a new Journey record as well.
That's crazy. You know, I think too, it's like you're a band. You know, of your stature nowadays, it's almost like you just want to have email addresses for like all your fans, you know, and you can just send them an email like, hey, we got a record out, here's a link where you can go buy it or something like that, you know, you're talking to them almost so much more directly than it used to be in the old days. And that can be exciting, right, in some ways, and then challenging in others.
I think it's all challenging, you know. I mean, You have to think about when you go in to make a record. Is you know, I don't think you're ever going to see the money back ever. You know, it's like kind of like out of pocket, but you got to do it just for the art.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like otherwise you got an attorney sitting on duty all day long and all night long, just taking down links to everybody downloading it for free. Right. And that's been happening forever. So, I mean, it's like you got to just say, well, you know, I want new music out there, and we've got some new ideas of how getting it out there and making sure we get a little residual from it. And so I think we're ready to check it out again.
That's cool, man. And I love that, you know, music just still pouring out of you after all these years. It's awesome.
You know what? I've been more busy than ever, and I just actually got involved with this, you know, trafficking thing with you know, this producer down here in LA, and I redid a police track. Everybody's doing police tracks. I don't know if you've seen the news about it. I mean, I know Tyler is doing something with Slash.
Yeah.
And you know, a bunch of different artists, but I did Synchronicity too. I redid that with Arnell.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Steve Smith's getting ready to play drums on it when he gets back from Europe, which he's going to rip it up, but I rearranged it a bit, and it's always been an amazing song, and we kept that part of the song intact, but when it goes into the little freak out solo section in the middle, I like kind of rewrote that. And then when I went back and listened to it the next day, it was great as it was, but I go, I think I want to add another 5 minute to it. So I wrote a whole new thing, because they're talking about having a show in London in September for you know, a benefit for the whole thing. And I said, well, if I got one chance of getting on stage and playing something, I want to set myself up for it. And Arnell just ripped it up, man. I mean, I was like, Sting?
Yeah,
he does it all, man.
He's got a great register for that, man.
He does it all. I mean, I don't know if you've ever gone and listened to, you know, where he came from. The band that I found him on in the link in YouTube, it was a band called The Zoo. But he does A to Z. He does Sting. He does the Police. He does, you know, Tyler. He does Robert Plant, and it's uncanny.
That's awesome.
You know, I mean, he's a true chameleon, and really all those voices are him. You know. I mean, he does them for real. There's no joking around.
Well, see him tonight doing Journey songs, Hollywood Bowl. Neal Schon, thank you so much for coming in, man. This is really cool. I'm glad.
Thank you, man.
To be here.
Please spin this record if you can.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You want? You know, I had some Cream queued up, but let's play something from this. You want to play "Take a Ride on the Way Out"?
Sure.